Revenge films.
In my house, I have a 5-year-old son that's currently in preschool. Due to an unfortunate incident, I had broken my leg, so I explained the situation to the preschool and asked them to arrange an additional bus stop in front of our house to pick up and drop off my son. There was one other girl who was also using the stop in front of our house, and she was in the same class as my son. I didn't know her mother very well at all, especially not enough that we would have exchanged contact information at any point. However, one day that mother started arriving late to pick up her daughter, and it began to happen more frequently. Eventually, she started showing up 1 to 2 hours late to come pick up her daughter as if it was nothing. The bus driver was still letting the little girl get off the bus without a parent there to pick her up, and I wasn't going to leave her out in the street alone, so I started taking her into my house until her mother would arrive. When the mother would finally arrive to pick up her daughter, I gave her a warning, but she would just say, "I'm sorry, I had to work overtime unexpectedly," and leave with her daughter. To be fair, working moms were more common these days, and depending on the job, overtime was completely understandable. She was around the same age as me, and it seemed like she was working hard, so I chose not to say anything further that day. However, perhaps she got comfortable because we looked after her daughter, but she started to come later and later to pick her up. On the worst days, she wouldn't arrive still by dinner time, and we didn't know what to do. I also told the preschool that they shouldn't be letting the child off the bus without the parent present to pick them up, but I'm afraid we haven't received any requests for extended care. And if it wasn't their problem, on top of that, if she's coming late to pick up her daughter, perhaps you can look after her for a short while? That seemed to be the end of the conversation, and it also made me question the preschool for responding this way. That being said, it wasn't the child's fault at all. Perhaps if I left the child outside, maybe the mom would recognize what she was doing and stop arriving late to pick her up. But as a parent, I couldn't bear the thought of something unfortunate happening to the little girl as a result. But I still had a broken leg, and I wasn't that free to move around either. If the little girl got injured when I wasn't looking, I told both the mother and the preschool that I couldn't take that responsibility. The mother, however, had the nerve to say, "I had to work overtime, so there's nothing I can do about it. Isn't it important to help each other?" As if I was the one at fault here. At first, sure, I agreed with her. But there's a big difference between feeling that way on my side and being told that from the person who's causing the inconvenience to begin with. That's why I told the mother, as soon as you know that you'll be working overtime, please alert the preschool. To which she would agree in her words, but never once did in action. On top of that, the preschool said, "It's just for a few hours, right? It's not like it happens every day." And they continue to deflect any responsibility whatsoever. In the back of my mind, I was wondering why the preschool was saying it's not possible to look after her for those few hours, and yet they were telling me to do the exact same thing. My suspicions and distrust were growing, not only for the mother, but also towards the preschool. One day I spoke to the bus driver that was dropping off the children every day. "Since her mother isn't there, can you please not let her off and take her back to the preschool and keep her there?" I tried to claim, but
"If I take her back, then it puts me in an awkward position too."
I didn't understand his response at all, but he quickly closed the bus doors and drove off. The little girl looked the most sorry, and it made my heart hurt to see her feel this way. For the record, the preschool was an officially accredited preschool, but it was run by one family. Our town had a lot of problems with the children being put on waiting lists for preschools, and the one that my son was finally able to get into with pickup and drop-off services was this place. For that reason, I also didn't want to create too many problems, but no matter how many times I tried to report my issues to the manager in charge, who should have been responsible.
Well, I see.
He just seemed annoyed and didn't provide any solutions, and I never once received a word of apology either. I was reaching my limit and said, "If this continues any further, I'll be making a claim with the city office," and hung up the phone, but he didn't seem to take me seriously. Even after that, nothing changed and nothing was solved. And after a few hours went by, my worst nightmare happened. The little girl who had been dropped off by herself was playing in the backyard of our house, but due to heavy rain the day before, the ground was wet, and she slipped and lightly hit her head. My son came running to me, and I of course took her straight to the hospital. Luckily, she didn't suffer any major injuries, but when the mother came to pick her up and heard what had happened, her attitude quickly changed. "How did this happen? She got hurt in your backyard, so we will of course have you pay the medical bills as well as pay a settlement fee as an apology," she started to say. I was confused. I can't deny that she was hurt in my backyard, and for that I will apologize. However, I've spoken to you on multiple occasions about coming to pick up your daughter, haven't I? And yet you're the one who is always late to pick her up regardless. But then, this time, she said, well, then we won't collect any additional money from you, but in return you can look after her from now on. You better give her snacks and dinner too, because you have that responsibility now after this. I was stunned. Not only was she refusing to recognize any of this was her fault, but I couldn't stand the fact that she was planning on continuing this behavior. Looking after her child meant the same thing might happen, including this mother trying to take money from us if anything were to happen to her daughter. On the other hand, I tried to explain the situation and discuss it with the preschool again, but as usual, the conversation went in circles. I'd run out of patience and options, so I went to the nearest police station and I explained the current situation up until now and asked what my options might be. I also spoke to my husband, and in order to protect ourselves, we decided to take recordings or notes of all future interactions. Anything that could become evidence just in case for the future. At first, it felt excessive, but judging by the preschool's lack of responsibility and the mother's behavior this time, I was uneasy and I didn't want to take any chances. I really wanted to change preschools, but this was the only preschool in the area that had pick-up and drop-off services available, so I wasn't left with any options. Even after that, the little girl's mother insisted, to make up for getting my daughter injured, you better look after her until I come pick her up. So I summarized everything that had happened until now, as well as all of our past conversations and agreements, including the fact that I had said no originally, and yet she still wasn't coming to pick up her daughter. I recorded it all so that she couldn't deny it later, even if she tried. I called the preschool side as well and telling them that dropping off the child without a parent present was also their responsibility, and that no matter how many times I tried to warn them of this, that they never tried to do anything about it on their side. I of course recorded this conversation too. A few days later, that day, my son had caught a cold and was staying home from preschool. That afternoon, I also had an appointment at the hospital. So right around the time that the preschool bus would be dropping off the children, nobody was home. I'd already reported this to the preschool in the morning, but a few minutes after we came home from the hospital, the little girl's mom came up to our house to pick up her daughter. Because I wasn't home, I told her that there was no chance I would be looking after the little girl, and so I panicked and contacted the preschool. But they said that they let her off the bus as usual. We asked them to alert the police immediately. About 1 hour later, someone from the police department arrived at our doorstep and told us that they found the little girl playing by herself in the park, so they had taken her to the police station until somebody claimed her. According to the little girl, someone from the preschool had told her, "Just press the doorbell of that house." And that's all they said, as they let her off the bus without anybody there to pick her up. However, the little girl felt like she would be bothering me if she pressed the doorbell, so she couldn't bring herself to ring the bell. I explained everything that happened up until now to the police, including the recordings that I had. They said that in this case, none of the responsibility would fall on my shoulders. As relieved as I was when I thought about how the little girl must have felt, when none of this was her fault especially, I not only felt bad, but I was full of anger towards the preschool and the mother. After that, the preschool tried to contact me multiple times, saying they wanted to apologize and have a conversation about it. But given all of our previous conversations, I told them I couldn't trust them and declined. I later found out that the mother's overtime was all a lie and that her affair was discovered when the police launched an investigation. Of course, the mother was divorced and sued for child neglect, and she was forced to pay a hefty sum. The husband even came to my house to apologize with an envelope of apology money for the inconvenience his wife had caused up until now. The little girl was taken in by her father and her grandparents and ended up moving far away. Shortly after the little girl moved away, our family also arranged for our child to quit this preschool. It is a handful, but rather than leaving our son in the hands of a preschool that I didn't trust, I thought it would be better to watch him at home. However, we got lucky and the town nearby had an opening in their preschool. We thought things would go well from here, but a few weeks later, the unthinkable happened. The irresponsible preschool's manager, as well as his family employees, were all arrested. That was because after our incident, the police launched an investigation into the preschool. The young employees who felt like they would be roped into the mess confessed everything about their inner workings of the preschool, such as the daily abuse and physical punishments towards the children, as well as the harassment and overworking of all non-family employees. As expected, all of the parents were furious and they decided to group together and sue the preschool. My situation may have been the catalyst, but everything that they had done up until now all came crashing down at once. and I'm sure they were about to be hit with an unimaginable lawsuit. I think it's a perfectly fitting result for a preschool that was supposed to be protecting our precious young children.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.